I walked into my father's New Year's Eve party wearing my mother's emerald necklace, the one they thought they'd never see again. My stepmother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My stepsister's perfect smile cracked like ice. They had 48 hours to steal what was mine. I had one midnight countdown to destroy everything they'd built. My name is Catherine Chen, and this is the story of how I turned their celebration into a confession. The invitation arrived 3 weeks before New Year's Eve, delivered not by mail, but by my father's assistant. Professional. Impersonal. A cream-colored card with gold embossing that read, asterisk, join us for an evening of elegance as we ring in the new year. Black tie required. Asterisk. No personal note. No phone call. Just a formal summons to my father's Riverside estate, the mansion he'd bought 2 years after my mother died. The mansion I'd never been invited to before. I was 29 years old, working as a forensic accountant in downtown Seattle. I lived in a modest apartment with a view of the Sound, drove a sensible sedan, and spent most of my evenings reviewing financial statements that told stories of fraud, embezzlement, and betrayal. Numbers don't lie. People do. And I'd gotten very good at reading the difference. My father, Richard Chen, was a commercial real estate developer. Or at least, that's what his business card said. What he really was a man who'd spent the last 15 years building a second life with a second wife, systematically erasing the memory of the woman who'd actually built his empire. Diana. My stepmother. 42 years old, with the kind of polished beauty that comes from expensive procedures and designer clothes. She'd been his executive assistant when my mother was dying of ovarian cancer. By the time Mom took her last breath, Diana had already moved from the office to our home, from employee to companion, from mistress to wife. The wedding happened 6 months after the funeral. I was 14. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, leave a comment below. Let's connect and share our stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I stared at the invitation for 3 days before I decided to go. Not because I wanted to celebrate with them, but because something about the timing felt wrong. My mother, Jennifer Chen, had been a brilliant corporate lawyer before she got sick. She'd helped my father navigate his early deals, structured his partnerships, negotiated his contracts. She'd been the brain behind his success, though he'd never admitted it publicly. When she died, she left everything to me. Not to my father, who she'd legally separated her assets from years before her diagnosis, knowing she didn't want Diana's hands anywhere near her legacy. The house we'd lived in, the cabin in the San Juan Islands, her investment portfolio, all of it went into a trust that would mature when I turned 30. In 6 weeks, I would turn 30. And in the past month, I'd noticed something unusual. Someone had been making inquiries about my trust. Small, careful inquiries through third-party attorneys. Questions about the structure, the trustees, the beneficiaries. Questions that only someone planning something would ask. I pulled the invitation out again. An evening of elegance. Black tie required. They were planning something, and they wanted me there to witness it, or maybe to participate in it without knowing what I was agreeing to. I called my mother's former law partner, Marcus Webb. He'd been the one to structure the trust, and he'd been watching over it like a guardian angel ever since. Catherine, Marcus said when he picked up. I was just about to call you. About the inquiries? I asked. Yes. Someone's been very interested in the terms of your trust. They've been trying to find loopholes, ways to contest it or delay the distribution. Who? A firm called Sterling Legal Associates. They specialize in estate challenges. And according to my research, they were retained by a Diana Chen 3 weeks ago. I felt my blood turn cold. She's going to challenge the trust. She's going to try, Marcus said. But she needs grounds. The trust is airtight. Unless what? Unless she can prove you're unfit to manage the assets. Or unless she can demonstrate that you've abandoned your relationship with your father, showing that his current spouse should be considered the rightful heir to family assets. I understood immediately. The invitation. The party. They were going to stage something. A public display of my rejection, my absence, or my unsuitability. They were going to create evidence. I'm going to the party, I said. Catherine, that might be exactly what they want. I know, I said. But I'm not going empty-handed. I spent the next 2 weeks doing what I do best, following the money. Sterling Legal Associates was expensive. Their retainer alone was $50,000. I pulled Diana's financial records, the ones I had access to through public databases and credit monitoring services. She didn't have $50,000. My father did, but his accounts showed no such withdrawal. So where did the money come from? I dug deeper. I found a new LLC registered under my stepsister Olivia's name. Olivia, who was 26 and supposedly working as a social media consultant. The LLC had received a wire transfer of $75,000 2 months ago from an offshore account. I traced the offshore account. It took me 3 days and some creative use of financial investigation tools, but I found the source: a loan secured against property my father owned. Specifically, property my father thought he owned. The Riverside estate. The mansion where the New Year's party would be held. According to public records, my father had purchased it 2 years ago for $3.2 million. He'd put down 20% and financed the rest. But when I pulled the original deed, I found something interesting. The down payment, the $640,000 that had been required to close the deal, hadn't come from my father's accounts. It had come from my mother's estate. Before she died, she'd liquidated some assets to help my father one last time, as she'd written in her journal. She'd loaned him the money with a promissory note that specified repayment within 5 years, with interest. That note was part of my trust. And it had never been repaid. Which meant, legally, I had a claim on the property. I sat in my apartment, staring at the documents spread across my dining table. The promissory note. The deed. The loan my father had taken against the house to pay Diana's lawyers. They were leveraging my mother's money to steal my mother's legacy. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. "I need you to file a lien," I said. "On what?" "On the Riverside estate. My father owes my mother's estate $640,000 plus interest. That note is in default. I want a lien placed on the property immediately." Marcus was silent for a moment. "Catherine, that will trigger a cascade. If he's leveraged the property, the bank will see the lien and call the loan. He could lose the house." "I know," I said. "File it on December 30th. I want it recorded the day before the party." "That's aggressive." "They started this," I said. "I'm just finishing it." New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. I drove to the Riverside estate in my mother's old Mercedes, the one I'd kept in storage for years. I wore a black silk gown that had been hers, elegant and understated. And around my neck, I wore the emerald necklace. My mother's emerald necklace. The one my father had given her on their 10th anniversary. The one Diana had asked about repeatedly after the funeral, claiming it was family property that should stay with my father. It had never been family property. It had been a gift, documented and insured. And it was mine. When I pulled up to the circular driveway, a valet approached. I handed him the keys and walked toward the entrance. The house was ablaze with lights, music floating through the open doors. I could see people inside, glasses of champagne catching the light, laughter echoing across the marble floors. I stepped into the foyer. A server offered me champagne. I took a glass and scanned the room. My father saw me first. He was standing near the grand staircase, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my rent. He looked distinguished, silver-haired, successful. He looked happy. Until he saw me. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. He whispered something to Diana, who was standing beside him in a shimmering gold gown. Diana turned. Her eyes landed on me, then dropped to the necklace. Her face went pale. Olivia was across the room, surrounded by a group of young professionals, all of them laughing at something on her phone. When she looked up and saw me, she froze. I walked toward my father. The conversations around me quieted, people sensing the shift in energy. "Catherine," my father said. His voice was tight, controlled. "You came. You invited me," I said. "It would be rude not to attend." Diana recovered quickly, plastering on a smile. "We're so glad you're here. It's been too long." "Has it?" I asked. "I wasn't sure if you'd notice." The barb landed, but Diana ignored it. "Let me introduce you to some guests. There are some wonderful people here tonight." "I'm sure there are," I said. "But I'm not here to network. I'm here to celebrate the new year with my family." I emphasized the word family. My father flinched. "Of course," Diana said. "Well, make yourself comfortable. Dinner will be served at 9. I nodded and moved deeper into the house, feeling their eyes on my back. "Are you hooked? Drop a like if you want to see how Catherine takes control of this party. And make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to take a turn no one will see coming." At 9 p.m., we moved to the dining room. The table was set for 20, crystal and china gleaming under the chandelier. I was seated at the far end, as far from my father as possible. Symbolic. Dinner was a performance. Diana played the gracious hostess, directing conversation, making toasts, laughing at jokes. My father played the successful patriarch, talking about his latest development projects, his plans for the new year. I sat quietly, eating, observing. At 10:30, as dessert was being served, Diana stood. She tapped her champagne glass with a knife, the crystal ringing clear and bright. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," she said. The room fell silent. "Richard and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This year has been incredible for our family, and we're so excited about what's to come." She looked at my father, who stood and took her hand. "As many of you know," my father said, "I've been building this company for over 30 years. And I'm proud to announce that this year, we're expanding. We're launching a new development in partnership with some incredible investors, and we're making this a true family business." He gestured to Olivia, who stood and smiled. "My daughter Olivia will be joining the executive team as Director of Marketing and Community Relations." Applause. Smiles. Congratulations. I felt the trap closing. "This is a new chapter for the Chen family," Diana said. "And we're grateful to everyone who supported us on this journey." She didn't mention me. She didn't look at me. I'd been erased. I stood up. The room went quiet. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said. My father's eyes widened. Diana's smile froze. "Please," my father said, his voice uncertain. "Of course." I picked up my champagne glass and walked to the head of the table. Everyone was watching me now. "To family," I said. "To the people who build us up, who leave us legacies, who teach us the difference between what's real and what's performance." I looked at my father. "To my mother, Jennifer Chen, who built the foundation of everything you're celebrating tonight. Who gave you the money to start this company. Who gave you the down payment for this house. Who gave you everything, and asked for nothing in return except honesty." The room was dead silent. "And to the new year," I continued, "where debts come due and trusts mature and the truth stops hiding in offshore accounts and false LLCs." Diana's face went white. Olivia looked at her mother, panic in her eyes. I raised my glass. "To 2025. May it bring clarity." I drank. No one else did. I set down the glass and pulled a folded document from my clutch. I placed it on the table in front of my father. "This is a lien," I said. "Filed yesterday against this property. My mother loaned you $640,000 15 years ago to buy this house. You signed a promissory note agreeing to repay it within 5 years. You never did. That debt is now mine, and it's in default. As of this morning, this house is encumbered." My father picked up the document. His hands were shaking. "You can't," Diana said. Her voice was sharp, desperate. "This is our home." "It's my collateral," I said. "You borrowed against it to hire lawyers to challenge my trust. You used my mother's money to try to steal my mother's legacy. So yes, I can." I looked at Olivia. "And your LLC? The one that received the $75,000 from the offshore account? That account is tied to a loan against this property. Which means you've been funding your lifestyle with money that was never yours." Olivia's face crumpled. She looked at Diana, who looked at my father. "This is a misunderstanding," my father said. His voice was weak. "Catherine, we can talk about this privately." "Why?" I asked. "You made your announcement publicly. You celebrated your new family business publicly. I'm just making sure everyone knows who actually funded it." I turned to address the room. "My mother built this. Every brick of this house, every dollar in that company, started with her work. And when she died, she left it to me because she knew exactly what would happen if she didn't." I looked back at my father. "She knew you'd choose them over her memory." And she was right. The clock on the mantel began to chime. It was midnight. "Happy New Year," I said. I walked out of the dining room, through the foyer, and out the front door. Behind me, I heard the explosion of voices, the chaos erupting. I didn't look back. The lien held. My father couldn't refinance without paying off the debt, and he didn't have the liquidity. The bank called his loan. He had 60 days to pay or sell. Diana's lawyers dropped the case when they realized the trust was unassailable and their client had no funds to continue fighting. Olivia's LLC collapsed when the IRS started asking questions about the offshore transfers. In March, my father called me. We met at a coffee shop near my office. "I'm selling the house," he said. He looked older, tired. I can pay you back. With interest. Good, I said. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For forgetting her. For choosing wrong. I looked at him. I saw the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd taken me to father-daughter dances, who'd disappeared into grief and never found his way back. I forgive you, I said. But I don't trust you. And I won't forget. He nodded. Fair. On my 30th birthday, the trust matured. I received everything my mother had left me, the house, the cabin, the investments. Marcus helped me restructure everything into a foundation in her name, funding scholarships for women in law and business. I never went back to the Riverside estate. My father moved into a modest condo. Diana left him 6 months later. Olivia moved to California. I kept the emerald necklace. I wore it on the first day I opened my own forensic accounting firm, named after my mother. Some families are built on love. Some are built on lies. And some are built on the quiet strength of women who knew exactly what they were worth and refused to let anyone forget it. Thank you so much for listening to Catherine's story. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what you thought about how Catherine handled this situation. Was she too harsh? Or exactly right? Don't forget to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, remember, the truth always finds its way to the surface. You just have to be brave enough to bring it there.